Hello everyone, my name is Zainab and today I'll be presenting our Information Technology Capstone project called JourneyOne. Together with my team, we created a centralized employee lifecycle management platform designed to simplify how organizations handle onboarding and offboarding. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce the team behind this capstone project. I served as the team lead and worked on backend development. Maliha was our front-end developer. Javier was focused on database designing. Anthony was our product owner as well as the backend developer. And lastly, Hugo was focused on software testing. Together, we collaborated across different areas of development to design, build, and evaluate JourneyOne. Now let's move on to our actual project. Many organizations still rely on manual processes to manage employee onboarding and offboarding. As these processes grow more complex, it becomes harder for teams to keep information organized and ensures that every step is completed correctly. This can result in delays, missed updates, and security risks when employee access or resources are not properly managed. Ultimately, these challenges increase administrative workload and create unnecessary risk for the organization.
When we designed JourneyOne, we first focused on who would use it. HR managers start the process by creating onboarding requests and making sure new hires are ready for day one. IT managers handle the technical side, like assigning equipment and managing access. Auditors need visibility so they can check compliance and verify that actions were completed correctly. Employees also benefit directly when onboarding and offboarding are clear and organized. That is what helped shape our requirements. Functionally, the system needed to support onboarding and offboarding, role-based access, equipment tracking, and audit reporting. Non-functionally, it needed to be secure, reliable, easy to use, and maintainable. Now that we know who we have built it for and what it needs to do, here's the solution we came up with. JourneyOne centralizes the entire onboarding and offboarding process into one system. It reduces manual work, improves visibility, and helps prevent important steps from being missed. We base the design on role-based access control, workflow tracking, and audit logging so each user only sees what they need, every step is traceable, and the system stays secure and compliant.
Okay, perfect. So now I'm just going to briefly talk about the architecture of the application. So what differentiates JourneyOne from basically any other onboarding process? Well, typically in kind of like the landscape of IT onboarding, you have three roles, right? You have HR, you got IT, and then you got auditors who kind of act as proofreaders. Now, typically, these three would log into separate applications. Now, what we want to do is just make one centralized application which everyone can log into. And now the way it does that is thanks to our React front end. Basically what the React front end will do is basically detect attributes tied to your account, and then depending on the attributes, we'll let you access certain features. So let's say you're an HR manager. You might have access to promote any type of onboarding processes, or if you work for IT, you might have access to stuff like accepting licenses and stuff like that. And then like I said, an auditor might be able to just proofread these two roles. Now, whenever you do something, after the React front end, whenever you do something, that gets processed through our Express API. Now basically, this Express API basically handles most of everything done. So it splits neatly into these four categories. So first, it checks who you are. Then, after it checks who you are, it checks what you can do. So again, like I said, if you're an HR manager, it'll say, okay, you have access to so-and-so. Then, after that, it'll actually run the task flow, and then it'll perform whatever action you decided to do. And then after that, just for our sanity's sake, it'll record what's changed. And then after all that's done, all this data gets figured into our PostgreSQL database. So in short, we just made one big pipeline, one that's automated and one that authorizes and authenticates, and then just has one central database that records everything. Let's just take a brief overview about the system and operations. So basically, these are divided into three levels. First, you have the front end, which we made with React and Vite. And then basically, as I discussed in the previous section, this is the layer that determines what features and workflows you have access to. So basically, you might have access to onboarding, stuff like offboarding, equipment management, stuff like that. Then You have the backend, which are basically consists of our Express API. So this does most of the heavy lifting. And then this Express API communicates with our database layer, which is where we store our PostgreSQL database. Then, furthermore, our layer manager security is basically control-based access. So basically, depending on what your account attributes may be, you'll have access to certain roles and features. Then, the data layer, it has a JSON fallback in the case of something goes wrong. The JSON acts as a neat little backup that can back up most information. Lastly, as for our DevOps, we use GitHub and branches and pull requests to manage our website.
For our results, JourneyOne achieved a 93% task success rate across the main workflows we tested, including onboarding, equipment assignment, and access requests. We also received a usability score of 90 out of 100 from 5 participants, which showed us that the system was easy to understand and to navigate. The main feedback was to make tasks more visible through cleaner notifications and progress indicators. Finally, our role-based access testing was 100% successful, confirming that each user could only access the features allowed for their role. Our team followed a sprint-based process with weekly goals and divided the work between front-end, back-end, database, architecture, and testing. We collaborated through GitHub by using separate branches, pull requests, and code reviews before merging all the changes. One challenge we faced was merge conflicts, when multiple team members worked on the project at the same time. We improved communication and coordination to solve those issues and keep the project moving. We also follow the principle of least privilege when designing user access. So every role only had the permissions needed for their responsibilities.
Looking ahead, there are several areas where JourneyOne could be expanded. First, we would like to introduce AI-assisted employee provisioning, where the assistant could recommend the appropriate equipment, access permissions, and onboarding tasks based on an employee's department and role. This would help reduce manual work for HR and IT teams, while making onboarding more efficient. Another improvement would be adding a security monitoring dashboard that provides visibility into permission changes, high-risk actions, and failed access attempts. This would help teams identify and respond to potential security issues more quickly. Finally, we would like to explore identity system automation by integrating with platforms such as SSO and Active Directory to automate account creation during onboarding and access removal during offboarding. And that's it for JourneyOne. If you have any questions, please let us know. Thank you.